All right, hello everybody, and welcome to today's Smithsonian Learning Lab online office hours. My name is Tess Porter, and I'm an educator and digital content producer here at the Smithsonian Center for Learning and Digital Access, the office behind the Smithsonian Learning Lab. If this is your first time joining us, we hold these office hours just about every Tuesday from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. You can keep updated with our schedule at the URL here on the screen. Our schedule is also available on our homepage underneath the Learn section. If you would like me to show you exactly where that is, I'd be happy to do so today. So these online office hours are for me to answer any questions you have about the Learning Lab. It's a great opportunity to get some one-on-one help. So I can help with really anything you need about the lab. So if you're looking for more information about what the Learning Lab is in general, if you're looking for information where to start in finding distance learning resources, if you're looking for more information on how to use some of the more advanced features of the lab, or if you're having trouble finding something, whether it be a resource or collection on a particular subject, I am happy to help during this hour that we have together today. So depending on where you're joining us, there are a couple different ways that you can submit your questions. If you're joining us on YouTube, you can submit questions at any time using the chat box, which you'll see to the right of the video on YouTube. And if you're joining us on Facebook, you can submit your questions using the comment box below the video. Throughout today's session, I will be watching the chat, answering questions as they come in. Sometimes it'll take a minute for your question to appear on my end. There tends to be a little bit of lag, but I will get to your questions, so just hang in there with me. So with all of that said, I'm going to navigate over to the Learning Lab homepage now. If you'd like to follow along with me, I'm going to learninglab.si.edu, that URL here on the screen. I'm going to do a little bit of a screen sharing switcheroo here. All right, and here we are on the Learning Labs homepage. So as I mentioned, you can ask questions at any time today using either the chat box or the comment box, depending on where you're joining. Let me put up a little ticker here. So I will be answering questions as they come in. For those of you who are watching now, as you're thinking about questions that you have, I will just give a quick introduction to the Learning Lab if you happen to cross the stream and are curious to know kind of what the Learning Lab is and how it works. The Learning Lab is a free online platform designed with teachers and students in mind, but available for anybody to use. It's a site where you can discover digital museum resources from across the Smithsonian, create interactive learning experiences with them that you can then share with other users. You don't need an account to search for resources and collections on the site. However, if you do create an account, that's when you can start developing your own collections, creating something that's useful for whatever your learning environment might be. So as I wait for the first questions to come in, I just want to dive a little bit deeper into what a discover, create, and share mean on the Learning Lab. And to do so, I'm going to be going through our homepage, but please feel free to interrupt me at any time with a question that you have. Again, you can enter questions via the chat box on YouTube or the comment box on Facebook. So as I mentioned, on the Learning Lab, you can discover resources from across the Smithsonian. These resources take a few different forms. They can be anything from an image of artifacts, photographs, and artwork that you typically find within our galleries, but they also include things like primary source documents, articles and blog posts, video and audio recordings, lesson plans, and a whole lot more. These, again, come from all of our museums as well as our education, research, and cultural centers. And the amount of resources we have in the lab continue to grow as we continue to digitize what we have here at the Smithsonian. You can use resources that you find to create Learning Lab collections to use for learning. In the lab, you can also discover collections that others have created to adapt to your own learning needs, or you can just use them kind of as you find them. There are a few different tools in the lab to help you create a collection that'll fit your needs. When you create a collection for the first time, you don't have to start from scratch. You can copy and adapt a collection that someone else has created. So say if you find something that someone at the Smithsonian created and think, hey, this is really awesome, but I need to bring down the reading level and I need to bring in some resources that make this more interesting to my students, something that fits in with what we're already studying in class, you can do that. You can copy and adapt a collection that someone else has created to fit your own needs. You can build in interactivity with the creation of questions, the addition of other information that you wrote, and you can also upload external resources so you aren't restricted to just what we have here at the Smithsonian. So if you find a resource from another institution, say the Library of Congress, you can bring that into your collection. You can also bring in something that you created. So say if there's a worksheet that you always use to teach a particular subject, you can upload that right into your collection. Finally, you can share your creations with others, whether they be your students, colleagues, or the Learning Lab's greater Learning Lab community. If you'd like to share a collection with another user easily without publishing, you can simply copy and paste the URL to share. But if you do publish, you can still make changes at any time, so don't worry about making things permanent. So, for those of you just joining us, we have just begun today's Smithsonian Learning Lab online office hours. You can see the notification here on the screen. The purpose of these office hours are for me to answer any questions you have about the Learning Lab. You can enter questions at any time using the chat or comment box, depending on where you're joining us. While I wait for today's first question to come in, I'm going to turn off my webcam, but I will still be here, still watching the chat, and I will return as soon as I receive the first question today. So I'll see you again soon. Hi, welcome again to the Smithsonian Learning Lab's online office hours. I see we just received a question that I'd love to answer. I'm going to pull it up here on the screen from Erica, who says, Hi, I am an educator working at a museum trying to develop a distance learning program. I was wondering if you had any recorded live sessions with kids you'd be willing to share. That is a great question. While my office doesn't work specifically with students, we do most of our distance learning work with teachers. Other educators at the Smithsonian do distance learning work with students and may have some resources that might be helpful to you. I'm going to show you where those would be located to begin tracking them down. So I'm going to hide your question again so you can see what I'm doing here on the screen. So I'm on the Smithsonian Learning Lab homepage right now, located at learninglab.si.edu. And I'm going to navigate to our distance learning resources page, which you can see that banner of right there on the screen in blue with distance learning resources. I'm also going to flash the URL up here on the screen. That'll bring you to it directly. Let me hide it again so I can show you what I'm doing. But if you need to rewind later, this session will be archived, so you can rewind and bring that up again. So here on the Distance Learning resource page, we gather resources from across the Smithsonian connected to distance learning, not just those on the Learning Lab. And actually at the bottom, we have a calendar of distance learning opportunities from across the Smithsonian, including many that are targeted toward students. So here, for example, today at 11 a.m., the National Portrait Gallery held Young Portrait Explorers, which is a running distance learning opportunity that they run every Tuesday. Virtual writing hour is another opportunity here. And there are others, including ones I've facilitated from the National History Museum. They've been doing a series where students can learn from experts in their fields. They also have a wonderful series called and of course, because I'm on air, I'm forgetting the name. It'll come to me in maybe 5 minutes. But they also have an opportunity where weekly they have kind of a seated conversation with an expert about a topic. And all of those sessions are archived as well. If you don't mind coming with me on a bit of a journey here, I'd love to find this for you. Another one, while I'm thinking of other things that might be helpful to you, Erica, the National Air and Space Museum also has a opportunity that they run called STEM in 30, which is also facilitated for young or students of all ages, but they do record those sessions and keep the archive available on their site. So I guess as I'm thinking through your question live, Erica, this calendar is a great starting point, but I'd also recommend going to specific museum websites. I think National Portrait Gallery, National Air and Space Museum, and National Museum of Natural History. Their websites will have quick links to recorded sessions that I think will be helpful. So for example, I'm going to go to the National... let me hide my screen real quick. So I'm going to the National Air and Space Museum website. Let me reshare. Got to go to Learn, Educator Resources. Oh, actually, STEM in 30 is what I was looking for here at the National Air and Space Museum. And so here you can watch their latest episode that they streamed earlier this year, as well as their schedule of upcoming episodes if you'd like to tune in for ideas. And so again, the other museums that I know do distance learning opportunities for students and do record and make available the archived versions of their sessions are the National Portrait Gallery and the National Museum of Natural History. You can find those archives on their websites. Typically, they're located under a section called Learn. I think other museums here at the Smithsonian do this as well for students. So it would be worth, I think, checking around to see who else makes them available. But I know those three definitely do. So I hope that's helpful, Erica. If you have any further questions, if I didn't quite answer your question, please feel free to let me know in the chat. I'm going to continue watching it. And for the rest of you watching too, if you're just joining, we're in the middle of today's Smithsonian Learning Lab online office hours, where I'm here to answer any questions you have. It's a great opportunity for some one-on-one help. You can ask questions that you have either in the chat box if you're joining us on YouTube, or the comment box if you're joining us on Facebook. If you've got questions about the Learning Lab in particular, whether it's about how to use some of the features of the site, maybe you want to learn how to create your first Learning Lab collection, or you're looking for particular types of resources or collections, I'd be happy to help with that. I'd also be happy to help with kind of distance learning questions more broadly. On this distance learning resource page, which I showed briefly in answering Erica's question, we're gathering resources from across the Smithsonian to support educators, students, and caregivers in navigating distance learning. We update this page all the time as new resources are created, and I would be happy to walk you through what's available here if it would be helpful. I've got a question here, a follow-up question here from Erica. Erica asks, this might be asking a little too much, but do you know if any of the videos include the student in the video, such as not just the speaker, but the audience too? I am not positive about the answer to that question, Erica. I think for the most part, no, just for student privacy concerns. However, I believe STEM and 30 and the opportunity offered through the National Museum of Natural History do. Sometimes in distance learning programs that they ran, I know pre-COVID, sometimes they would invite a particular classroom to take part and be the face of the student audience, though the opportunities would still be open to students from across the nation. They would have a camera set up in that classroom to have students ask questions on air. So it's possible in some of the archives you might find that available, but I'm not positive. And in answering your question, since I've been talking a lot about the National Museum of Natural History, I would love to find the program, the fantastic program that they run there that I cannot remember the name of in this moment, that I think will be helpful to you too. So what I'm doing right now, as I took away my screen sharing, I'm going to bring it back. I'm navigating to the National Museum of Natural History's website, going to their education page to find this. They've got upcoming video webinars here. They've got their upcoming schedule of distance learning opportunities and their different series. So the one that I was thinking of that is a long running program that existed pre-COVID is Smithsonian Science How. And so some of their previously recorded programs may have students there. You can see that they also have their video webinar archives here, which would be worth diving through. I do not believe the opportunities offered through the National Portrait Gallery have recordings of students part of it. Typically, the distance learning opportunities that they've been running post-COVID have been to kind of national audiences and don't include a camera on the other side of the screen. But it would be worth checking their archives. I hope that's helpful, Erica. Don't apologize for asking a question that might be too much and that I might not know the answer to. Please ask questions anyway. I want to help how I can. Um, uh, Depending on what you're looking for, if you're looking for other facilitation strategy ideas, you might also find a series of webinars that we did in my office helpful. They're called Easy Peasy, and they were a series of webinars targeted for educators talking about how to use Project Zero thinking routines with museum resources to support deep thinking. And so in these webinars, typically, one of our educators here would act as the student audience. So it doesn't include kind of student responses directly, but I think they're really great models of ways to facilitate distance learning in a digital environment. So I'm going to share my screen again. The recordings of these sessions are available on the Learning Lab, which I'm back on now, learninglab.si.edu. To find the recordings and Learning Lab collections associated with this series quickly, I'd suggest doing a search for Easy Peasy, just as I'm doing here on the screen. When you do a search in the lab, the first thing that you're going to find are resources related to your search term. For Easy Peasy, there are video archive recordings located here. So each includes museum resources and modeled Project Zero thinking routines. We've also created Learning Lab collections for each webinar, which include the questions asked, the resources covered, and a recording to the webinar. And the nice thing about the collections is in each title, we talked about, or we mentioned the questions that were explored. So this might be easier to navigate through. Just to note, if this is your first time on the lab, by default, search results will be visual like this, but if you'd like to browse by text instead, in the upper right, you can change this to a list view by clicking on the 3 lines here. That might be easier to scan for this purpose. Each one of these PD sessions is only 30 minutes too, so they're pretty easy to look through. I just wanted to mention them in case they might be helpful in what you're exploring. And I see your next comment, Erica. Good. I'm glad that might be helpful. Please take a peek. And if you still have questions, feel free to ask me again back here. You can always get in touch with us via our email, which I'm going to flash here on the screen for you too. That's learninglab.si or at si.edu. We'd be happy to help. For the rest of you watching, we're about halfway through today's Smithsonian Learning Lab online office hours, which we hold just about every Tuesday from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. This is a time for one-on-one help if you need it. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the Smithsonian Learning Lab or about distance learning resources in general here at the Smithsonian. As you're looking ahead to the fall semester, if you have questions, whatever they may be, you can enter them at any time using the chat box if you're joining us on YouTube, or the comment box if you're joining us on Facebook. Some of the questions I typically get are about different features of the lab. If you're interested, I can walk you through how to do things like create your own Learning Lab collection, build in some interactivity, say if you want to add questions to the collection that you're currently working on. I'm also happy to help point you toward other resources or collections on a particular topic if you're having trouble. I'm pretty good about brainstorming search terms, so I'm happy to kind of help you find what you're looking for. And I'm happy to answer any other questions you have as well. So please feel free to plug in questions at any time. Crystal, I see your comment here. Thank you. I'm really glad to hear that you love our resources. I hope they're helpful to you. So as I wait for the next question to come in, I'm going to turn off my webcam briefly, but I will be back as soon as I receive the next question. Just as a note for all of you, sometimes there's a little bit of lag from when you hit enter and send your question to me and when I see it on my end, but it will come through to me eventually, and I will be back as soon as I see it. So I'll see you all again soon. All right. Hi, everybody. I see we have another question here. Hi, Crystal. Let me pull up your comment here on the screen so I can read it. So you're putting together a unit study using the book Echo, which is based on World War II, the harmonica and music. There are also references to the Japanese internment camps. Could you help me with this? Yes. And I have some ideas of collections that people have already put together that might help you. So we have a lot at the Smithsonian connected to Japanese internment camps, sometimes also referred to as Japanese American incarceration camps. Let me think of the best way to kind of get you into a search to find what you're looking for. So let me start with the search for a Japanese American internment camp. And then let me back up too to talk about what I'm doing here for those of you who are watching who are less familiar with the lab. So to search for either resources or collections, you'll want to use the search bar in the top left of your screen. This will appear on every page of the Learning Lab. So to find resources and collections connected to Crystal's question, I'm going to do a search for Japanese American internment camp. Searching incarceration camp will also work. So what we're going to see here first are resources connected with my search terms. There are a couple different ways to refer to Japanese American internment. And so a few resources come up here, some really good ones, but not all the ones that we have here at the Smithsonian. And so in continuing to search for resources here, I might think about searching for just internment camp, perhaps searching for incarceration camp. That might help me find what I'm looking for quicker. There are also search filters I can use on the left-hand side of the screen to help me narrow my search down. So here I've got 72 resources, and I can see that I have a lot of articles and websites, which is awesome. But, if I'm looking for images of objects that were used in incarceration camps, if I'm looking for photographs, I'm not seeing those pop up right away. And so something I might think about doing is narrowing my search by perhaps the image resource filter to narrow that down. I can also search by resource provider, which also means the museum or center that the resource belongs to. However, for this particular topic, Crystal, I know that there are a lot of really great Learning Lab collections built around the topic where educators, including myself, have already done the work of finding what we have across the Smithsonian and pulling them together. And for this particular search, I think you'll have a lot of success looking there. So to find those Learning Lab collections, you'll want to click on this tab here, Learning Lab Collections. It'll take a moment to load, but this is showing me collections created both by Smithsonian staff and regular users around Japanese American incarceration. So there are a few in particular here that I'd love to highlight, though I think, with 23 results, there are even more that might be helpful. One of my favorite collections is this one here, created by an educator at the Smithsonian American Art Museum. It's a way of looking at Japanese American internment through a contemporary artwork created by Roger Shimomura, a Japanese American artist. And so what this educator, Phoebe, has done here is she's pulled together this artwork, questions that she'd recommend using, walking through this artwork with students, information about the artwork that you can pull out and share with students, as well as additional resources that can help expand this. In this collection that she's built, in her description, she has chosen to include kind of step-by-step instructions on how she typically walks through this with learners. So here, first step, to begin, shows students Roger Shimomura's painting, then following that conversation, etc. And then she walks through the steps of the activity. So this might be helpful to you. What I'm going to do is navigate back to my search results page. I also put together a set of collections where I simply gathered resources related to Japanese American incarceration because I found it difficult to search for here at the Smithsonian. Curators have different ways of referring to it, and it was kind of difficult to see what we had in total. So I created a set of collections trying to make them easier to find. You can find these under my name here, Tess Porter, and I can show you one example. Each one of the collections links to the others in the series. So if you find one, you can find them all. One of the ones here is the one with the bracelet as its thumbnail image. I'm going to click on this. It'll take a second to load because I gathered quite a few resources here. So what I did in these collections is I created four, each with a different type of resource in it. So this one includes objects that were created in incarceration camps. So in each, I include kind of basic information about Japanese American incarceration, including a link to an awesome exhibition at the National Museum of American History, which has a wealth of information that I absolutely pulled upon. So that link is here. A really wonderful video where letters written by Japanese Americans in incarceration camps are read by Muslim American children kind of together. It's a really powerful video. But that aside, resources in this collection include a variety of objects created by those who were incarcerated in these camps, and they each include information about kind of who created them and what they were used for. So I hope that might be helpful to you. The other collections that I built are linked here, as I mentioned in the description. The collections include images of camp life, publications, letters, and other documents that were created by those who are incarcerated, and additional articles and videos about inmate experiences. So I hope that those might be helpful to you in looking for resources to investigate this topic, Crystal. I'm trying to move back to my search result page to see if there's anything else. I see your comment. Great. I'm really glad that you're excited about this. And the history of harmonicas, I bet we have stuff on this too. Let's dive in and do a search for it. I'm just curious to see what we have. You may already know this, but the Smithsonian is really big, and one of our centers here is the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage, which also includes a lot of really great resources connected to music. And so I wonder if they might have any resources that would support that exploration of the history of harmonicas. The way that I would navigate that search is by simply searching harmonica to see what we find. I'm also wondering if the National Museum of American History might also have some artifacts, some examples of harmonicas that might include some contextual, kind of historical contextual information with them. Might take a little bit of digging here. And I think I'd absolutely have a lot to learn about the history of harmonicas myself. And so if you're able to go in here with your knowledge of harmonicas to search for, if you know what cultural groups use the harmonica first, some early innovators in harmonica music, you might be able to have a more successful search than me. But I'm already finding examples of harmonicas used by individuals. Looks like this Smithsonian Magazine article might be able to dig in a little bit deeper into the history of harmonicas. So might be worth checking that out. But I think that sounds awesome. And I also really like using a novel as a springboard to kind of additional subject areas to study. As you look through the lab, you might find some examples of that as well. Other ways that educators are using novels to kind of springboard into additional areas of study. I'm thinking in particular, there's a great collection that middle school educator created connected to the novel Bud Not Buddy. She pulled together a set of resources connected to the novel, both about kind of the city of Pittsburgh, but also baseball to help her students build some kind of historical context for the novel, but also spark their curiosity and picking out objects that they were interested in, and as a way to also think about further areas of inquiry. So I hope this is helpful, Crystal. If you have any other kind of areas that you're curious about, anything else I can help with, please let me know in the chat. This collection sounds really awesome, and I look forward to seeing it if you choose to publish it once you finish pulling it together. And I know, too, there are more collections available on Japanese American incarceration. It looks like there are even some collections with harmonica in the title or description that might be helpful to you in pulling this together. Oh, it looks like there is a collection of photographs of musical instruments that must include the harmonica there. So you might find something helpful there as well. So again, Crystal, if you have any other questions, please let me know. For the rest of you watching right now, we're about 15 minutes from the end of today's Smithsonian Learning Lab online office hours, which we hold every Tuesday from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. This is the time for you to get some one-on-one help. From me, I'm an educator and digital content producer here at the lab. So if you have a question, you can plug it in either in the chat if you're joining us on YouTube, or in the comment box if you're using or joining us on Facebook. I'm answering questions as they come in. Sometimes there's a little bit of a lag, but as soon as I see your question, I'll help you out with it. I see I have a question here from Steve. No need to apologize. You're looking for help narrowing your search. Let me bring up your question. If I typed in Smithsonian Castle in the search engine, I received numerous hits which have nothing to do with the castle. Are there any videos? There should be. And let me see if I can help you narrow this down. So I'm going to walk you through my process in searching for resources for this. So let me hide your comment so you can see my screen. So I'm going to start off with on the search that you tried, searching for Smithsonian Castle. I think part of the reason that you might be getting a lot of results for this that don't have anything to do with the Smithsonian Castle is because of how our search engine works. When you do a search like Smithsonian Castle, it's looking for resources that have Smithsonian Castle in the metadata or information associated with the resources. Then it's also searching for these words separate from each other. So it's bringing up every resource that has a Smithsonian in the metadata, which is why you're getting so many things that are not applicable to your search. So the first thing I would do to try find resources that will be helpful to you is to use some of the lab's search filters, which are visible on the left-hand side of the screen. Primarily for searching for, this will help you search for resources from specific museums or centers, but it will also help you refine by resource type. So I see you're interested in videos. And I can refine by videos here underneath resource type. So I'm going to click on video here, and I'm going to click the blue update search button to see how much this is able to narrow my search down. All right. So it looks like it's helped me a little bit, but I can see that, while this first video here is connected with the castle here on the mall associated with the Smithsonian, I'm also getting videos connected with castles in general. And a way for me to see this too is, as I just mentioned in answering the last question, by default, my search results will appear as an image grid like this, but to view a more text-based approach, I can click on the list button here, these three lines, to see a preview of the title and the description. So it looks like this first video is about the Great Hall at the castle, a building of a gingerbread Smithsonian castle, talking a little bit about the legacy of James Smithson, whose endowment founded the creation of the Smithsonian. So with this search, which doesn't feel successful to me, I'm going to try something. And if it works, I'm going to walk you through what I did. let's see. I don't want to send you down the wrong path if this is something that doesn't work. What I'm trying to do is restrict my search to just the phrase Smithsonian Castle, and it doesn't seem to be working right now. So to take a step back, we make updates to the lab all the time based on user feedback. And sometimes when we make updates, features that worked previously stop, and this is one of them. Previously, you used to be able to search by phrase by using the quotations. It doesn't seem to be working anymore, and so I'm going to send a note to our developers to see if we can get that working again. So in the meantime, in approaching your search, Steve, one approach you can take is going through the video search results here. There are 78 of them, though, which I know is not ideal. Something else that you might do to narrow down and find what you're looking for until we're able to get that quotation search adjustment back online is also refine your search by resource provider. So here, this gives not only Smithsonian museums, but also the different centers that make up the Smithsonian, of which there are quite a few. And one of those centers here is the Smithsonian Office of Public Affairs, which is the office behind videos like these, the one that focuses on the Great Hall and James Smithson, that seem to give a bit more information about kind of the history of the castle here at the Smithsonian in general. So what I have done is I've clicked on Smithsonian Office of Public Affairs, I've clicked the blue update search button, and I've been able to shrink down my search to just resources from that office. So I do have some more videos here about the specific history of the castle here at the Smithsonian. So I hope that's helpful. And I hope, too, to be able to get that quotation filter back online, too, because I know that'll make searching for things like this much easier. We do tie to Smithsonian Archives, going to your follow-up question, Steve. We pull in resources from the Smithsonian Archives as well as the archives associated with each kind of specific museum. So we have resources that we pull from the archives at the National Museum of American History, the National Museum of Asian Art, and others. So you'll find those as you search for the lab through the lab too, and that might also be a good way of finding resources connected with what you're interested in. So I just want to try a test here. So I've gone back into the search for Smithsonian Castle, back to those nearly 4,000 search results. And underneath resource provider here, I'm seeing Smithsonian Institution Archives as one of the centers here. So if I refine my search by Smithsonian Institution Archives, it's shrunk to my search to just over 600 resources. And it's kind of bringing me everything that has castle in the metadata. And there is some pretty great stuff here I'm seeing. So archival photos of the castle, both inside and outside, that might be helpful to you. And I just want to note, too, that as you search through resources in the lab, not only can you find videos here and images like photographs, but you can also find blog posts and websites. So I'm seeing here, we have a blog post from the Smithsonian Institution Archives website that dives into a specific resource that they have available, which seems to be the earliest photo taken of the Smithsonian Castle. So you're going to be able to come across resources like this as well in the lab to find, if you're interested in seeing blog post results as you're searching through the lab, you can filter your search by text under resource type. So let me just show you what that looks like. So here I can find 61 blog posts from the archives connected in some way with the castle. So I hope that's helpful to you. I see your thanks in the chat. Good. I hope this will save you a step. The 4,000 resources you received the first time is too much for me to go through too. So I hope this is helpful. And I wanted to connect back to Crystal in the chat. Awesome. I'm really glad to hear that you use a lot of the techniques with your students online. And about the resources we were looking at earlier about harmonicas, possibly from Carnegie Hall. I know we have others in the lab, and it would be interesting to search Carnegie Hall to see what would come up. The list button, Steve, I can absolutely show you where that is. I'm just pulling up the question here for those of us who are joining on Facebook and didn't see the comment. To view, as I mentioned, there are two different ways to view search results, either images, which are the default, or a list view, which is what you're seeing here on the screen now. It'll show you a preview of the title and the description. The button to change that view is right underneath the sun on the search results page. So default is the grid of images, but to view the list, you'll click on the 3 lines, and that will show you a more text-based result. So I hope that helps, Steve. Please let me know if you have any other questions. And for the rest of you watching, we are nearing the end of today's Smithsonian Learning Lab online office hours. I still do have a few minutes to answer questions if you have them. If you're joining us on YouTube, you can enter your questions using the chat box. And if you're joining us on Facebook, you can send your questions using the comments. Sometimes it'll take up to a minute for your questions to appear on my end, but I will answer them as soon as I see them. This is a great time for some one-on-one help. So if you have any questions about the Learning Lab or about distance learning, our resources available here at the Smithsonian, I would love to help. So please, if you have any questions, send them through either the chat or comments. As we're wrapping up today, I wanted to share where the schedule of upcoming office hours are located on the homepage. This is something we hold just about every Tuesday from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. So if you have any questions between now and next week, you'll have another opportunity to come in and chat with myself or a colleague next Tuesday. I actually believe I might be hosting next week, but we can find out by looking at the schedule on the homepage. So I'm on the homepage now, located at learninglab.si.edu. And to view the schedule of upcoming office hours, I'll click on the Learn button on the left-hand panel. And in this section, which includes multiple resources to learn more about not only using the Learning Lab, but also digital museum resources. If I scroll down to professional development and events, here's where you can find that running online office hours schedule. So the next office hours are going to be held on Tuesday, August 25th. And yes, I will be hosting that session. So if you have a question between now and next Tuesday, you can either save it for Tuesday to come ask in person, or you can always get in touch with us via our email, learninglab@si.edu. This filters to me and the rest of the Learning Lab team here, and we are happy to help you. Just reach out. So with that, it is now 5 p.m. So I'm going to end today's broadcast, but I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks for all your questions today.